Welcome back for another deep dive with us.
Always a pleasure.
Today we're going to be diving into Deuteronomy 19.
Ooh, that's a good one.
It is, and as always, we're going to be looking for those connections between this ancient text and...
Modern world.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So much to unpack here.
There is.
Right away,
Yeah, right off the bat.
you get hit with this idea of cities of refuge,
Yeah.
which is such a fascinating concept.
It really is.
So imagine a time before, courts and police.
Right.
And if you accidentally cause someone's death,
Oh, boy.
the victim's family could just come after you for revenge.
It was a very different system back then.
Right. It was like immediate justice or...
Yeah, more like immediate retaliation.
Yeah.
Not always justice.
But these cities of refuge offered a way to kind of de-escalate the situation.
That was the idea.
They gave the person who caused the death a safe place to go.
Sanctuary
Okay.
until a trial could be held.
Right. So they could determine, was it really an accident or...
Was there...
Yeah. Was it intentional?
It's like manslaughter versus murder today.
Right.
Big difference.
Big difference. And
And they were wrestling with that even back then.
yeah. And trying to create a system that...
Aimed for fairness,
Right.
for both sides.
That protected the innocent, but also recognized that...
Sometimes accidents happen,
Yeah.
and the punishment should fit the crime.
And it's so interesting how that connects to our legal systems today.
Oh, absolutely. It's like a foundational principle.
Right. This idea that
We consider intent,
yes, and we try to have a process.
due process,
Yes, to determine the truth.
evidence, witnesses, all of that.
All of that. And it's amazing to think that...
Thousands of years ago.
Yeah, they were already thinking about these things.
They were building a society. They
Yeah.
needed laws.
And they were trying to figure out how to make it just...
How to make it work.
Yeah, and fair.
And, it wasn't just about, life and death situations.
Right.
Deuteronomy 19 also talks about respecting boundaries.
Oh, yeah, the whole property line thing.
Very important back then.
Land was everything.
It was your livelihood.
So messing with your neighbor's property markers,
Huge no-no.
that was a big deal.
Big time.
But it's interesting because
Yeah, I see where you're going with this.
it's like that specific rule about property lines.
Yeah,
It speaks to something bigger,
it does. It's about respect.
about respecting agreements.
Right. Honoring what you've agreed to.
And acknowledging the rights of others.
Whether it's a physical boundary
Right, like a fence line.
or even something more abstract.
Oh, like intellectual property?
Exactly, in the digital age.
Copyright, trademarks.
It's all about those lines.
And it makes you think about,
In our world today,
yeah, do
we always respect those lines?
are we as careful?
As they were back
Yeah.
then?
Good question.
It's something to ponder, isn't it?
It is, for sure. And speaking of things to ponder,
Oh, boy, here we go.
Deuteronomy 19 also gets pretty specific about,
Oh, boy, here.
witnesses in legal cases.
Yeah, that's a whole other can of worms.
Right, the whole, 2 or more witnesses are required to establish a charge.
Safeguard against false accusation.
Right, and then there's that bit about
Oh, yeah, the consequences for lying under oath.
serious stuff.
They weren't messing around.
No, they weren't.
It highlights how much they valued truth.
And how much they feared misinformation.
Lies could really damage a society.
And it's
Like they were looking ahead
to our world,
to the internet and social media.
where information spreads so fast.
And it's not always accurate.
Right. So how do we discern truth from falsehood?
That's the million-dollar question.
It is. And what responsibility do we have to verify information?
Especially before we share it with others.
Yeah, that's something we could all stand to be more mindful of.
Couldn't agree more. Yeah, it's almost scary how relevant some of these ancient ideas still are.
Right, like they were looking into the future or something.
Maybe they were onto something.
Maybe so.
But, okay, we can't talk about Deuteronomy 19 without addressing the elephant in the room.
Oh, here we go.
The famous eye for an eye principle.
Yeah, that one always gets people talking.
For sure, it sounds pretty harsh at first glance.
It does. But if you read Deuteronomy 19.21 in context,
Yeah, what's the bigger picture?
it was actually meant to limit retaliation.
It was all about proportionality.
Right. So instead of escalating violence,
Endless cycles of revenge.
exactly, they were trying to establish a system of,
Proportionate justice.
yeah.
The punishment should fit the crime.
So an eye for an eye was more about making sure things didn't get out of hand.
Right, not about encouraging more violence.
More about setting boundaries.
Yeah, like this is the limit.
And it's fascinating how that connects to our debates today
Oh, yeah.
about the purpose of punishment.
Retribution versus rehabilitation.
Right. Is it about revenge or is it about,
Helping people change.
reforming them? And
It's a tough question.
it is. There are no easy answers.
Different societies have different approaches.
And it's a debate that's been going on for centuries.
Clearly.
But, before we get too far down that rabbit hole,
Yeah.
I want to circle back to those cities of refuge for a second.
Oh, yeah. Those safe havens.
You mentioned they were meant to protect people who...
Committed accidental crimes.
Right. Unintentional harm.
Yeah, like they didn't mean to hurt anyone.
And it makes me wonder
Mm.
if we could apply that concept more metaphorically today.
Oh, I like that.
Like, do we have modern equivalents of those cities of refuge?
Interesting question.
What do you think?
Well, if we think about spaces where people can find support, protection from judgment, a chance to heal and process their experiences,
Yeah.
like support groups
Oh, yeah.
for addiction or trauma,
Shelters for victims of domestic violence.
even online communities where people can connect.
Find understanding.
Yeah, share their stories without fear of being condemned.
It's like those spaces offer a kind of metaphorical refuge,
I think you're onto something.
allowing people to be vulnerable,
To seek help
to work through their mistakes.
without facing immediate judgment or retaliation.
It's a powerful idea.
It is.
And it makes you realize
What?
that even though we're talking about an ancient text,
Yeah.
the themes of justice,
Fairness.
creating a society that protects the innocent,
But also offers a path for redemption.
those are still so relevant today.
Absolutely. They're timeless.
It's like Deuteronomy 19 is this blueprint,
For building a just and compassionate society.
a society where everyone has a chance
To be heard.
to be treated fairly.
To find their way back if they've lost their way.
I love that. And there's one more thing for Deuteronomy 19 that I keep coming back to.
Oh, yeah. What's that?
It's that whole emphasis on fairness.
Oh, right. Like ensuring justice is served.
Yeah, exactly. We talked about those rules for witnesses.
And the consequences for lying under oath.
Yeah, like those rules were there to protect the innocent.
And to prevent the spread of lies and misinformation.
Right. It's like they were saying, hey, truth matters.
And we all have a responsibility to seek it out.
Especially when someone's life or reputation is at stake.
It was serious business.
It was, and it's almost like they were advocating for critical thinking way back then.
You mean like question what you hear?
Exactly. Verify your sources.
Yeah.
Be aware of your own biases.
Don't just believe everything you read.
Especially on those clay tablets.
Yeah, those were the social media of their day.
Right, but that need to think critically.
To carefully evaluate information.
It's even more important now than ever.
With the internet and the constant flood of information,
Misinformation.
it's easy to get caught up in the hype.
Just blindly share something without checking if it's true.
We've all done it.
Oh yeah, for sure. But Deuteronomy 19 reminds us to slow down,
To be more discerning.
to be responsible with information.
Especially when it can have real-world consequences.
Absolutely. So as we wrap up our deep dive into Deuteronomy 19,
Yeah.
what do you think is the biggest takeaway for us today?
That's a good question.
Like, what wisdom can we glean from this ancient text?
That might still hold true in our complex world. Well, I think Deuteronomy 19 shows us that the principles of justice, fairness, truth,
Yeah.
those are timeless.
They transcend time and cultural boundaries.
It's like a blueprint for building a better society,
A society where everyone is treated fairly
where due process is valued.
and where the pursuit of justice is balanced with mercy.
It's about creating a world where everyone has a chance
To be heard
to be treated with dignity.
and to find their way back if they've made mistakes.
Like those cities of refuge offered.
Or those safe havens where people could find protection and support.
A chance to start over.
It's a beautiful idea.
It is.
And it's a reminder that even though we're talking at an ancient text,
Yeah.
the themes of justice, fairness, compassion,
Those are still so relevant today.
they're universal
They're part of what makes us human.
and they're worth fighting for.
Absolutely.
So we hope this deep dive into Deuteronomy 19 has given you some food for thought.
Some new insight.
And as always, we encourage you to explore the text for yourself,
See what other connections you can make to our modern world.
because there's always more to discover.
Always.
Thanks for joining us.
It's been a pleasure.